Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. This is going to be a really quick lab, guys. Basically, we're going to use KMS with EBS. So we're going to use KMS to encrypt our volumes. We're going to look at the different options available to us. We have kind of already done this, but it was more ad hoc at the end of the KMS section. Now we're going to look at it in a lot of detail. Obviously, going into the exam, you need to understand where, where you would be using KMS versus where you'd be using Cloud HSM and where you would be using each service, whether or not it's to basically create a key pair for you to log into EC2. Hence, you can't use KMS to do that. You can only use Cloud HSM to do that, or where you're going to use a key pair to encrypt your EBS volumes. Again, hint, you can only use KMS for this. You can't use Cloud HSM. Well, you could use Cloud HSM if you are using a third-party utility, which we'll cover off in this lecture. So this is a lab. You will need to log into the AWS console. Okay, so I'm logged into the AWS console. My region is in Ireland. Choose whatever region you want. Remember that when you're using KMS, your keys will be stored in the same region. You can't take a key that's generated from KMS in Ireland and then use it in Northern Virginia. It doesn't work like that. It's even more confusing because IAM is global apart from this part of IAM. So let's go ahead and create a key. I'm just going to call it my EBS key, something like that. I'm going to use the same description. I'm not going to go through all the rigmarole of doing my own customer master key. I'm just going to let KMS provide my key material origin. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. In here, my tags, I'll just say something like EBS and then yes. So this is only to be used for my EBS volumes. And then who do I want to have my administrator privileges? I'm going to give it to Mr. Musk. Go ahead and hit next. And then who do I want to have key usage permissions? I'm going to say Mr. Musk as well. I am obviously logged in right now at a root level though, so this won't really matter. So if I go back over to EC2, we'll go down to EC2. We're going to provision a new instance. So we're going to use the Amazon Linux AMI. I'm going to use the T2 micro, so I'm going to leave everything as default. In here, I'm just going to leave everything default as well. This is just configuring the actual instance. Going in to add the storage. So you can see by default right now it's not encrypted. We'll look at how we can encrypt the root device volume a little bit later. So your root device volume is where your operating system is installed, and when you first provision an EC2 instance, just in the way that we've done it, the actual the actual operating system volume or root device volume is not encrypted. That's not to say that you can't provision an EC2 instance with the root device volume encrypted. I'll show you how to do that. Now, if we add a new volume in here, we're going to get the option to encrypt additional volumes. Let's see what happens when we do that. I'm going to go ahead and hit next to add my tags. I'm going to leave my tags. Actually, I'll just add a tag and say, so I'm just going to name it my EBS encrypted EC2. Okay, go ahead and hit next. Note that it's tagging both the instance and the volume, so it makes it a bit easier. Go add our security groups. I'm just going to use an existing security group. I'm going to use my WebDMZ. Go ahead and hit review and launch. And in here, I'm ready to launch. Now in here, I can create an existing key pair or create a new key pair. Note here we've got proceed without a key pair. So in the next lab, we'll have a look at what exactly that is. So choose a key pair that suits you, that you definitely still have access to. I know this can start getting a bit confusing because we're creating key pairs left, right, and center, but go ahead and choose a key pair that will suit you. I'm going to use my EC2 key pair. I'm going to go ahead and launch my instance. That is now launching. I can go in and view my instance. I'm just going to pause the video and wait for this to launch. I'm actually going to delete this. This is from a Cloud HSM lab that I didn't know was still running, so apologies for that. I'm just going to pause the video now. Okay, so here I am in volumes, and I'm going to click in here. You can see it's now being detached. If I click in here and I go to actions and I go to modify volumes, it'll give me the option to change the volume type, even the volume size, but what it won't do is give me the option to change encryption. So I can't do it through modify volumes. What about if I took a snapshot of it? I could go in and create a snapshot. In here, it will allow me to change the name or name it and give a description, but it won't allow me to do any encryption. So this is a really important point. Once you provision a volume that's attached to an EC2 instance and encrypt that volume using KMS, that volume is always going to be linked to that key. Do I even get the option to go in and delete that key? I can delete customer managed keys. What about Amazon managed keys? Let's go into encryption keys, and I'm just going to change my region back over to Ireland. And if we have a look in here, it gives me the option to click in here and delete my customer managed keys. What it doesn't give me the option to do is delete my Amazon managed keys. It's just the Amazon or AWS logo there. So that is how encryption works with additional volumes. What about our root device volume? Let's go back over to EC2. And we're going to go and grab our root device volume. The very first thing we should probably do is just stop the volume. So let's go into volumes. So this is our root device volume. Go actions, and actually let's stop the EC2 instance because it is running. That will probably be easiest. So we'll go in here, go actions, and then instance state, and we'll go stop. That's going to stop our instance. Once that's stopped, we can detach it we can detach the volume from the EC2 instance. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is see whether or not we can modify it and how we can modify it. So just wait and pause the video for this to stop. Okay, so my EC2 instance has stopped. It is still, obviously my volume is still going to be attached to my EC2 instance. So I need to go over to my volumes and go ahead and detach it. So this is my root device volume. I'm going to go ahead and detach volume. This is really optional, but let's just do this for argument's sake. Across here, we can confirm that it's our root device volume because it is not encrypted. So it's going to take a couple of seconds. I'll just pause the video. Okay, so that has now detached. I can go in and go to my actions, and I can go and try and modify my volume. Of course, I can't add encryption in here. The only way I can add encryption is by going ahead and creating a snapshot. So let's go ahead and create a snapshot. So I'm going to call it my unencrypted root device volume, something like that, and probably the same description. Again, I can't change it in here, but we'll see how this works. So it's going to go ahead and create the snapshot. All I need to do now is go over to my snapshots in here, and from here I'll be able to take this snapshot and deploy it as an AMI. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, I'm going to pause the video. Sorry guys, but I don't want to waste your time. Okay, so my snapshot is ready. I go ahead here and go to actions, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create an image. This image I'm going to call my unencrypted AMI, and I'm going to use the same as the default description. Virtualization, everything else I'm going to leave as default. In here, I'm ready to go ahead and just create a new image from the EBS Snap. Again, that's going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to provision an image in here. Okay, so my AMI has now been created. It took about 5 minutes. Let's have a look at a couple of things that we can do in here. So the very first thing is we can go in and modify the image permissions. So right now it is a private image, but I could actually share this out to the world. Alternatively, I could share it with a specific AWS account. So I could add in another account number in here. So you really do have to understand that you can do this when you go into your exam. So you can either have it by default, it's private. You can make it public, or you could just share it with another AWS account. It is still unencrypted. How can we make it encrypted? If we go to launch, and we go to the instance types that are available. So I've got a T1 micro. I could go ahead and hit next. I could go ahead and hit next and go to storage. In here, I can't change the encryption, so I can't just launch this as an encrypted volume, which is a shame because, you know, I want to encrypt it. The way to do it is to go back here and go to actions, and then what we need to go ahead and do is copy the AMI. And so we copy the AMI, we can copy it to the exact same region that we're in. So I'm in EU Ireland right now. And instead of calling it my unencrypted AMI, I'm going to call it my encrypted AMI. So the key to adding encryption to the root device volume is you basically need to create an Amazon machine image. You then copy that machine image to a new image, and in here you click on encrypt target EBS snapshot. So we're going to encrypt this. In here we can select our key. Do you think we're going to be able to add our own customer master key? What do you think? There we go. We can add our customer master key as well as our default one. So I can now go ahead and encrypt this root device volume with EBS using my own customer master key. So I'm going to do that with John's customer master key. You can pick any one that you want, but this means that only John would then be able to access this EBS snapshot. So let's go ahead and hit copy. So it is a bit of a long-winded process. Essentially, you can't create a root device volume using or an encrypted root device volume immediately off the bat. What you have to go ahead and do is you create the volume, you then go in and create a snapshot or an AMI. If you create a snapshot, then what you'd have to go and do is create an AMI from there. Then you have to go and copy the AMI, and when you're copying it, that's when you enable encryption. You can use a customer master key, or you can use the KMS managed key. It's entirely up to you. And then that will then create a copy of the AMI, and then from there you can launch EC2 instances from that AMI. So it is quite a long-winded process, but it's really important that you understand how to do it going into your exam, because you can be tested on it. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh and see what we've got. So we have two more AMIs. We've got our encrypted AMI, which is our base AMI. We now have our encrypted AMI Thomas, and you can see the status has failed, so this is not a valid AMI. And then we also have our encrypted AMI John, and this is available. So we were able to change the type of encryption. We were able to go from one key to the other. I am logged in as a root user. Obviously, if I was logged in as Thomas and I didn't have access to John's keys, I would not be able to do that, but I could go in and change it potentially, to Amazon's just standard key. So do bear that in mind, but as a root user or with somebody with the permissions, you can change encryption keys on EBS volumes from one to another just by initiating the copy command. Do remember that obviously you have to be in the same region as where the keys are stored, so that is crucial. If you try and encrypt using a failed or a decommissioned key, you're going to get a failure. The very last thing I just want to point out is inter-region copying. So if we go to actions and we go ahead and copy our AMI and we go to a different region, so I'm going to go to Northern Virginia, which is where I have a whole bunch of different assets. In here, I'm going to enable encryption. Notice that the keys that it will come up by default are my keys in that region. It will not be the keys in this region. So yes, you can change encryption types from one to the other between regions, but you just have to make sure that the key in the region in which you're copying also exists in that region, if that makes sense. So I can't use my Irish key in the Northern Virginia region, even though I'm copying it from Ireland to Northern Virginia. Your keys will always be in the destination region. So that is it. Let's quickly just recap what we've learned. Okay, so quickly, what have we learned? Well, we've learned that you can use KMS to encrypt EBS volumes, and it's possible to encrypt root device volumes. In order to do that, you need to create an AMI. The initial AMI will be unencrypted, but you can then copy it, and in doing so, you will encrypt it. You can choose your different options. You can change encryption keys from Amazon managed to customer master keys, provided you have permission to access those customer master keys. So you can change encryption types on an EBS volume. You just need to create a new copy. And you can copy from one region to another and make those copies encrypted, but you must use the keys in the destination region to do the encryption. And again, it's just worth remembering going into your exam. Obviously, IAM is global, but your encryption keys are regional. They're all saved, in different regions, and you can't use one encryption key in one region versus another, at least not in KMS. We can in Cloud HSM, but we'll come to that in the next section of the course. So that's it from me, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture where we're going to look at how we can replace our public key with EC2 and what happens if we lose our private key. How can we recover our EC2 images? So if you've got the time, join me in the next lecture. Thank you.